ואלוס וידש נצלו. ייתן לאוכל בבך, ולעשוס וימלא. נראה בישועתך, ולשם אלוהינו נדבר. ימלא אדוני כל משלתך. עתה ידעתי, כי ישיע אדוני משיחי, יענהו משמי קודשי, וגבורס ישע ימיני. אלה ברכב ואלה בסוסים. אנחנו בשם אדוני אלוהינו נזכר. המה קורח נפלו, ואנחנו קמנו בנסדות. אדוני ישיע, המלך יעננו ויהיה קראנו. Okay. So we're learning Basi Legani. Thank you very much. Tafshin Yud, which is the Basi Legani of the Frierdiker Rebbe. Did Rabbi Dubov in the first class explain how there are about 40 or more Basi Leganis? Yeah, explain it. Okay. So this is the Basi Legani, the original, written by the previous Rebbe. And we're using the Hebrew-English edition. And we are on page, we're still in Ois Aleph, the first chapter. And we're on page 21. They started off by saying that the Shekhinah was here in this world, and then the Shekhinah left. The reason why the Shekhinah left was because certain Averos were committed, so the world was no longer worthy and deserving, good morning, and no longer a Keli for the Shekhinah to be here. So the Shekhinah was removed. And then another great sin happened, so it was removed again, and eventually it was 7 heavens away from our world. Then came 7 tzaddikim, starting with Avraham Avinu, and they, through their righteousness and through their good deeds, they brought the Shekhinah back down, and each tzaddik brought the Shekhinah down one level, and Moshe Rabbeinu brought the Shekhinah down to earth. In earth itself, where did the Shekhinah dwell? In earth itself, it dwelled in the Beis HaMikdash. And who accomplished this? Moshe Rabbeinu. And he says, and this is ultimately the whole purpose of creation, for the Shekhinah to be down here, and what does that mean? We explained yesterday, not only that Hashem wants the Shekhinah to be in this world, like a location, but it's not something about, a technical place, but it's also about the way the Shekhinah should be in this world. And that is through our avodah, that we're human beings with human challenges in terms of Yiddishkeit, that godliness is concealed. And as a result of our avodah, of removing the concealment, we bring godliness back into this world. That's the ultimate purpose of creation. So it's 2 things. Let's remember this point. Number 1, that the Shekhinah should be revealed in this world. And number 2, it should be revealed through our avodah. It should be revealed through our avodah. Then he brings the Zohar, and this avodah is called the Skafia and his Hapcha. Then he brings the Zohar, that the Zohar says that through Iskafia and his Hapcha we draw down a light, and that light shines in all the worlds. So the Maimer explains a new insight. It doesn't only mean that the light shines in all the world, it's describing the quality of the light, the kind of light. It's a different kind of light. It's not the light that shines in each world according to its capacity, but it's a light that's Seviv Kalamim. It shines in all the worlds equally. So when it says we're drawing down a light that shines in all the world, it means it shines in all the worlds equally. And that's Seviv Kalamim. To explain this better, so he starts explaining the difference between Seviv Kalamim and Mamala Kalamim. I'm preparing workbooks that has all the phrases and the quotes and the Hasidic terminology. So we'll go this over again and see it in writing. But the difference is, Mamala Kalam is the light of Hashem that shines differently in each world. In a higher world, there's more light. In a lower world, there's less light. And in each world itself, every detail of that creation, whether it's neshamis or malachim, if they're higher and lower, they get a bigger light or a smaller light. And Seva Kalam is a light that doesn't matter whether the world is higher or the world is lower. It doesn't matter if it's a neshama or it's a malach. It's a neshama of a tzaddik and a neshama of an ordinary person. This is a light that shines to everybody equally. What's it Seva Kalam? In order to appreciate more what Seva Kalam is, he explains what's Mamala Kalam, how there are different levels, and that's what we're holding. There, and it says that in the higher worlds, Hashem's light is more revealed, in the lower worlds, it's more concealed. The last thing we did was that the concealment has two parts to it. Number one, it's a lesser light, and number two, on top of that, there are garments or curtains or clothing or things that block the light. Like we said yesterday, the mashal, the gashmis would be a bulb that's 15 watts compared to a bulb that's 100 watts. 100 watt means it gives more light. 15 means it gives less light. Then you take the bulb that's 15 watt and you put it in a case that's dark. That means on top of the fact that the light is less, there's something that's blocking. Or another example would be the neshama. We know that there are infinite levels of neshamas. The neshamas of Avram and Yitzchak and Yaakov were much greater quality, and the neshamas of Moshe Rabbeinu, the neshamas of Tanoim, Amoraim, Neviim, Tzadikim, and our neshamas. If you remember from the beginning of Tanya, he compares it to the body, and it says the neshamas of our generation is called Ikvus in the Mashiach, is like the heels. So just like in the body, there's the brain, there are the hands, there's the heart, there's the nose, there's the mouth, there are the ears, and then the lowest part of the body are the legs, and in the legs itself it's the feet, and in the feet it's the heels. So there are different parts of the body. That's how there are different neshamas. So when a neshama comes down, that's not one of the great neshamas, the high neshamas. One of the simple neshama. It's a lesser quality neshama. There's less godly light in that neshama. And then the neshama goes into a guf and nefesh bahamis, and that's an additional concealment, like the case on the light bulb. So there's two things. Number one, the neshama itself has less quality because it's from a lower level. And number two, it goes into the guf and the nefesh bahamis, and that conceals it even more. So the same thing with Hashem's light. There's higher light, there's lower light, and then there are places where not only is it lower light, but it gets concealed in this physical world with the gashmias and also things that happen. Nature conceals godliness, so it's sort of a double concealment. So now he wants to go into explain the differences between the different levels of the worlds. And we're on page 20, the bottom of the page. Without elements, as it's known, the difference between the four spiritual realms. The Kislev, there's a pasuk that says, everything that's called by my name, it's for my glory, that I created it, I formed it, and I made it. So if you look at the words, you'll notice it's Bria, Barasiv, Yitzira is Yitzartiv is Yitzira, Asisiv is Asiya. So whenever you see in davening or in Tilim, it looks like it's using different words for the same thing. It's not really different words. It's a different level. So when Hashem says that I created, that I formed, that I made, it's actually alluding to the world of Bria, the world of Yitzira, and the world of Asiya. Where's Atzilus? So the beginning of the pasuk, everything that's called in my name and my glory, that's Atzilus. Here it doesn't say the word Atzilus, But the fact that it says Shmi Ukvedu, which means it's mine, means it's connected to me. And that's the world of Atzilus. Shem Daled is page 21. Daled is Atzilus, Bri Yitzirasiyah. The light in the world of Atzilus is not the same as is in the world of Bria and Yitzira and Asiyah. So this is something which I don't remember ever talking about it before. Normally you say there are 4 levels, right? But the truth is, in the 4 levels, there's also a division. Atzilus is like one category, and Bria, Yitzira, Asiyah is another category. In other words, yes, it's 4 different worlds, but Atzilus is totally of a different caliber, even more than Bria, Yitzir, and Asiyah. So, for example, in the Beis Hamikdash was set up like the 4 worlds. So there were 4 compartments in the Beis Hamikdash. What would be Atzilus in the Beis Hamikdash? The Kodesh HaKadoshim. What would be Bria in the Beis Hamikdash? The next chamber. That would be the Kodesh. What's in the Kodesh? The 3 things: the menorah, the Mizbeach, and the Shulchan. So that's the world of Bria. What's in what?
Why Atzilus is the higher world.
Why it is the higher world? We'll soon go to explain. Let's soon go there.
Okay.
So in the next room was a second room. What was there? Only 3 things, and also the laws: who can walk in, who could not walk in, change from room to room because each level is a higher kedusha. Was the room that had, which is called Kodesh, that had the menorah, the mizbeach hazahav, and the shulchan and the table. The next room is where you had the mizbeach, the sacrifices. That's where they shechted the animals, and that's where they wash their hands. So that would be corresponding to the world of Yitzira. And then when you walked in the front room, which was called Ezras Nashim, that remember the picture of the big room that has 4 rooms in each corner, that's Asiyah. So one of the things are that, of course, every level is another level, but between the Kodesh HaKadoshim and the next room, there was a curtain. There weren't any more curtains that blocked from one to the next. And that's because the Kodesh HaKadoshim is like Atzilus. And Atzilus is on a whole different level. So there's a curtain, because just like in Halacha, everyone was able to walk in the Beis Hamikdash until a certain point, only Kohanim. Until a certain point, could be other people could walk a certain point, only Kohanim. A certain point, Kohanim only when they're doing certain Avodah, limitations. The Kodesh HaKadoshim, nobody could walk there, not even the Kohen Gadol, only once a year, on Yom Kippur, and even then, only the amount of time that he was supposed to walk in. If he'd walk in one extra time, it would be Chas v'Shalom punishable by that. So that means that the Kodesh HaKadoshim was of a different caliber completely. But that's the same thing with the worlds. As much as we say there are 4 worlds, we also sometimes say it's 1 and 3. So he's explaining why Atzilus is Gilui HaHelam. Let me see if we can explain that, but let's first do a few more lines. Atzilus in Lashon Etzlei v'Samuch. So the word Atzilus, in terms of the grammar, comes from the word Eitzel. In Hebrew, Eitzel means close. In other words, this world is the closest to Hashem. Atzilus is also the same word as Atzala, which means emanation, that it emanates from Hashem. And separation, which means it's separated from all the other worlds. Atzilus, even though Atzilus is one of the 4 worlds, but generally speaking, Atzilus belongs more to the Ein Sof realm, and the other 3 are closer to the physical realm. The world of Bria, that's where it begins. That's where the idea of Yesh begins, that something that has substance, in some sort of, even a subtle way of separateness from Hashem, begins the world of Bria. In other words, the difference between the four worlds are that the higher up it is, the more it's one with Hashem. Atzilus is one with Hashem, even though we call it a world, but it's one with Hashem. Bria is already somewhat separate. Yitzira, a little bit more separate. Asiya, a little bit more separate. But in Atzilus, there's no sense of separateness. It's all one with Hashem. In many places in Chassidus, they explain that the difference between Bria and Yetzira would be like the difference between thought and speech. In other words, Bria would be like thought, speech is like, Yetzira is like speech, and Asiya means action, Asiya. Is there anything else beyond thought? Unconscious. Things that are going on in my head that I'm not even aware of, but it's still going on. Right? So if you think of it, all the difference between the four is how much it's connected to me. Action is altogether outside of myself. Action means I'm taking a table, wood, a hammer, then nails, I put it together. I'm doing things which are outside of myself, totally separate from me. What about speech? On one hand, it's separate from me. It's coming out of my mouth. Now other people hear it. On the other hand, it's still something from me coming out. It's still somewhat connected to me. But nevertheless, it separates itself from the person. Thought, I'm experiencing in me, in myself. Thought is connected to me. In fact, that's one of the reasons why thought could never stop. There's a quote, Brodana Chassidus, Machshava Mishotetet Hamid. The thought is always working. And that's why we think it's so hard to control thought, because I can't stop myself from thinking. We always talk about this in Chassidus, that you could stop yourself from thinking. You can't stop yourself from thinking, that's true. But we can stop ourselves from thinking about this subject and switch to another subject. But it is true that you cannot stop yourself from thinking, because thinking is so much connected to me and to my soul that if there's a soul, there's going to be thought. Thought is like an expression of the soul. So it's always work, even when we sleep. And that's what dreams are all about. It's thought. And even if I don't remember my dream, it still doesn't mean that I didn't dream. I was dreaming, but I just don't remember it. And I'm not aware of it. Sometimes we sleep, wake up in the morning, we don't think we dreamt altogether. But in truth, the thought is thinking. So thought is connected to me, it's part of me, to the extent that no one knows what I'm thinking. Speech is less connected to me. Now other people could know what I'm saying. And action is totally disconnected from me, totally separate. The unconscious is part of me. It's not even thought. It's part of me. And that's the difference, in a sense, between Atzilus, Bria, Yitzira, and Asiya. That Atzilus is absolutely one with Hashem. Bria is like thought, which means it's a little bit something separate, but it's still not separate because it's like thought. And Yitzira is further, and Asiya is further. So the word Atzilus comes from the word Etzle, close. Meaning that it's the closest to Hashem of the four worlds. A second, and in Bria, that's the beginning of the Yesh Me'ayin, meaning that's where things start becoming the sense of separateness. Of course, I'll get to you in a second. The separateness of this world doesn't compare to the separateness over there, but the beginning, the seed, the separateness becomes there. If I could just say this word from a minor, and uses this term, that Bria is a world that we can say it's not really Yesh, but it's no longer Ayin. In other words, it's not that like an Atzilus where there's absolutely nothing there other than Hashem himself, but it's also not something that you can say, oh, there's a substance there outside. Well, what is it? It's the beginning, it's the potential for separateness. And in Yitzir, that potential develops more. In Asiya, that potential develops more. Yes, Adina.
Might be a totally different topic, but meeting a lot of people who say that they had a dream about like, naming their child. That's what they named their child. Many people, so it might be a separate topic, but that's an outside thing, right?
They had a dream.
They had a dream of what to name a child.
Oh,
It's separate from like not your own inner thoughts. It's like a revelation, no?
in general, it says when parents get a thought what to name a child, that's a sort of a nevuah ktana. It's a miniature type of prophecy. Yeah.
When it comes to a dream, it's still prophecy. It's not nothing to do with. It's not from yourself. Like an outside thing.
That, yeah, coming from if it's in that category, then it's coming from a higher place.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's what he means. What he says in the page before, Atzilus. I'm talking about page 21. Atzilus is Gilu Yahelim. Gilu Yahelim means it's not something new. It's just revealing what's there. In other words, there's this. And let me ask you another question: the subconscious, is that the soul itself? Is that the essence, or is that also something which is an extension of the essence?
Extension.
Right. In other words, the essence is not thought. The essence is the source of thought and the source of everything else. But when a person is thinking, even in the unconscious mind, whatever they're thinking there, it's an emanation of the essence. It's not something separate. And that's what defines Atzilus versus the other three words.
People today be born from Akiva, and the Shabbat be born to be from Akiva.
Today, generally speaking, not. That's the difference. The earlier generations of Atzilus, the later generations of Bria, and Tzira, and so on. I don't know if you following me. You have the questions. You understood? Not understood? Can't read the faces.
If you feel like you're in a chance from Atzilus, because it's a hard time, it's hard to ground, and you feel so spiritually, you feel no, right? No.
Listen, the world. If you get a Zetz from the world of Bria, it's also pretty good, and you see he's also very high. There was once the Rebbe Rashab once said that there are many levels in Chassidus above Atzilus. Above Atzilus is Keser. In Keser is Arich. On top of Arich is Atik. Arich is infinite. Atik is infinite even compared to Arich. On top of that, there's the world of Akudim, which is this week's parsha, by the way, with the tongue, with the sheep. And there's a world of Nekudim, and there's a world called Adam Kadmon, and then there's Eretz Sefshlif, Nat Simtsum, and on and on and on. There's levels. This is beyond Atzilus. So whatever Rashab said, that the big, philosopher of Chassidus think that Atzilus is just a simple station there. But Atzilus is big. When the Alter Rebbe wrote the word Atzilus, his hands began to shake. He couldn't even finish writing the word. He wrote Aleph Tzadik Yud, and then he had to make a apostrophe because he was so overcome with awe. He was writing the word Atzilus. So Atzilus is very high, and the other words are also very high. It's just they're not like Atzilus. So when a person is inspired, it doesn't mean I'm in Atzilus, even though we use that as an expression, the person is in Atzilus, it means that they're not grounded. People might use that term. So what he's saying is that with the world of Atzilus, in a sense, there's nothing new. Atzilus is the soul, the essence of the soul, just more open. The world of Bria, there's something new introduced, a certain seed, a certain beginning, a certain root and source for separateness. And then as the light continues to progress, it gets more and more developed. Okay, let's continue at page 22. Zehu, and that's what it is. Shmi means my name. Kvedi means my glory. The Shmi of Kvedi, who I'm Yuchid Bi Adayan. So the reason why this implies, or this alludes to Atzilus, because it means it's still part of me, it's still connected with me, still one with me. Shekoi Aloylam Atzilus, this is the world of Atzilus. Shuolam HaYichud V'Eskalus, this is the world of unity. This is the world where everything is included with each other. She'ar sham betachlis hagilui. The light in Atzilus is a light which is the ultimate of revelation. There's no concealment there at all. So even when you talk about klipa, that everything comes from above, but klipa, there's no klipa in Atzilus. In the lower world, that's when it begins. First klipa snoga, then there's the three klipas which are totally klipa. But in Atzilus, there is no klipa. The whole concept of klipa, remember we said that so many times that everything comes from Hashem, so even klipas that come from Hashem. When the light is enough concealed, that leaves room for klipa. First, there's a klipa that's not total klipa, which we call klipa snoga. That's the klipa that's sort of a mixture. And then from there, it evolves until it becomes shalosh klipas atzmeis. So even the klipa snoga, which is more of a pirate thing, all the things in the world that are not treif, they're not prohibited, they're just not godly. Like the table and the chairs and the ceiling and the walls, they're not godly. Maybe this room is because we're studying Torah, but in general, physical objects, material objects are not godly, but they're also not anything wrong with it. An apple is not godly, but it's also not an aver. It's permissible to eat. That, according to Chassidus, an apple comes from klipas noga. Treif food comes from shalom klipas ways. Treif thoughts, treif actions, treif speech, lashon hara, or an action that's not kosher according to Torah. All this comes from shalom klipas ways. So even klipas noga, which is just a concealment, even that doesn't exist in Atzilus, because that's a world that's only godly, pure godliness. Where does it begin? The beginning is, the seed for it is in the world of Bria. So in Atzilus, everything is one with Hashem, and everything is one with each other. Even the spheres are one. You can't compare it all. You can't compare Atzilus to the three worlds. So now we know that in addition to the fact that there's a division, 4 worlds, within the 4 worlds themselves, there's a difference. One world, Atzilus, is one category, and the other 3 belong to another category. And in the 3 categories themselves, the Bria, Yitzir, Asir, Atzlam, Yesh Chilukim Adreges, Bagila Eris. Even in the 3 worlds, there are levels. In the world of Bria, it's in a higher level. In the world of Yitzir, it's in a lower level. In the world of Asir, it's even lower. Like the difference between thought, speech, and action. Thought is me, and it's part of me. Speech is something which is outside of me, but it's still more of an expression of myself and something connected to me. And action is something totally separate from me. When I do something, it's part of my energy is being invested in something outside of myself. There's a story with the Magadim is rich, that he once saw, I guess it was a vessel that someone created. And he looked at the vessel and said, the person who created this vessel was blind on one eye. And he explained that what he just said was not based on Ruach HaKodesh, some sort of spiritual knowledge, but he said when a person does something, they invest their energy in whatever it is that they're producing. And I could see that the energy invested in this object came from a person who was blind, but blind on one eye. So in other words, we can recognize that because it's very, very, very subtle, very refined. But he was able to see, just looking at the object, how and what kind of energy was invested in this kind of an object. So when a person does something, whatever we do, we're investing our energy in that. And that energy is totally separate from me. It becomes invested in a physical object. In speech, it doesn't become invested in a physical object. Speech, mainly, even though you might say today, gets invested in the recording. How does that work? So I'll have to figure that out. Okay. So everything we said up until now, page 23, This is the world. This is all about the light that is shining to the worlds, but not Sefer Kalam, but Mechinis Mamala Kalam. So here you have the other term, Mamala Kalam. This fills all the worlds. If you want to make it really very Gashmi, very technical, it's like the difference between surrounding something or filling it up. If you have a cup of water, how much water could you put in the cup? It's the size of the cup. If it's a 7-ounce cup, you can put in 7 ounces. Whatever the water is not in the cup, but around the cup. How much water could you put around the cup? The whole entire Atlantic Ocean can go around the 7-ounce cup without a problem. In fact, the Atlantic Ocean and the Pacific Ocean and all the oceans in the world can all surround a 7-ounce. Why? It's not going inside, it's around it. It's a very Gashmi commercial. We're dealing with Ruchnius, but it's bringing out the idea that when something goes inside, it's measured. When it's around it, it's not internalized, then it doesn't. And the difference is that this light, which is Sefer Kalam, is in essence an infinite light. And because it's infinite, number one, it doesn't go inside. And number two, all the levels are equally distant from infinite because they're all finite. And finite, the rule that the difference or the distance between one drop of water compared to the Atlantic Ocean is, trillions and trillions and trillions of times more water in the Atlantic Ocean than there is in a small dropper. But it's a number. We don't know to calculate the number. The Gemara says there was someone by the name of Shmuel, he actually was able to calculate the number, how much it's bigger, how many drops of water there are in the ocean. But there's definitely a number. However, when you're dealing with infinite, so the water in the Atlantic Ocean and the water in one little dropper is equal distance from infinity. So Atzilus and a world of Atzilus and a rock here in this physical world are equal distance from the infinite light. And that's why this infinite light shines everywhere equally. So when we're saying it shines everywhere equally in Sefer Kalam, it's a whole different understanding. It's not the finite light, it's an infinite light. Somebody want to say something? No?
So, Mamad Alan, let's put zeros down, and then the column is above the zeros, basically, or?
Correct, yeah. No, but sometimes you'll find a mimer that'll say Keser is like Sefer Kalam and Arich, Atik, but basically above Atzilus, that's Sefer Kalam. From Atzilus and down is Mamala Kalam. But Sefer Kalam means that even though those lights are infinite, but they shine to our worlds, and even though it doesn't penetrate internally, but it has an impact on the world by shining from the outside. It's like Begashmius, there's certain things that are external. We know food is internal. I eat food and I drink, that goes into my body, that makes me strong, that makes me healthy, that's my nutrition. There are certain things that are outside of a person, but they have an effect on the person. So the example given to that, which would be makif, would be clothing, garments. When a person puts on clothing, that has an effect. It keeps me warm. It protects me from rain, protects me from the cold. And also the Gemara says, it enhances a person. When a person, Rabbi Yochanan, the Maimon bring a statement by Rabbi Yochanan, he said, when I refer to my clothing, I call it mechabedusa, that which honors me. In other words, if a person puts on decent clothing, and beautiful clothing, the person is perceived now in a beautiful way. Even though the person himself might not come across that way, but when they wear beautiful clothing, jewelry, different things, actually the person themselves is their image is enhanced, and it's all things that are from the outside. That's called makif. Or the same with the house. Person lives in a house. Living in a house is not something internal. A house is something external. It's outside of me, but it affects a person. Number one, like I said before, it protects me from the rain, protects me from the heat, protects me from people who might want to harm me. I have my house, the doors are locked, the windows are locked. But besides that, it enhances a person's functioning. I have a place where to sit down, I have a place where to eat, I have a place where to sleep. All these things are external, but they all contribute to enhance a person's life. So when we talk about makiv, you might ask, oh, if it's makiv, then it has no effect. No, it's not internalized. Wow, this is, now please, that was quick, thank you. We got the workbooks. Okay. It's yellow.
The yellow is the new color.
Yeah, yellow means proceed with caution.
And you leave.
Um, and sometimes you would think of makiv, if a person comes to the Rebbe's for bringing, people came to the Rebbe's for bringing. There were those people who understood Chassidus, understood Yiddish, and they're listening, and they hear a question, and they hear an answer, and they're inspired. They hear words which are inspirational words. And there are people who came who didn't understand the word, and they were also inspired. They were inspired from the makiv. They saw the niggin, they saw the Rebbe. They saw, I remember I once brought someone to come to Fabrengen. I don't even think he had translators in those days. And he was sitting there and watching. Nobody would think, if you don't understand the word, after like at 20 minutes, you want to go home already. He sat all the way through, and he just kept saying that, wow, he's like a wellspring that just keeps, you're watching someone speak full of life, and he keeps speaking and speaking. And whenever spoke, it's interesting. Most people speak, and as they speak more, sort of all the fire calms down, and the voice gets hoarse. That's the normal. By the Rebbe, the more he spoke, the louder it got, the stronger it got, the more chayas were there. He was just amazed at that, which is not the understanding of what the Rebbe said. Makir. He heard a niggin. It was, a niggin. It's not something internalized, but it lifted him in a way like nothing else.
In a way, it sounds more inspiring than Makir by the Rebbe, no?
It's a Makir thing, yeah. I once had okay, I'm finished with this little Makir story, but I had a story with, I walked into 770 one night, and they were doing a lot of construction. So the place, as it is, it looks like amazing. So with the construction, it looked even more amazing. So the guy walks over to me, and he speaks to me in Hebrew, and he said, I brought this guest, which obviously didn't understand Hebrew, and he davens in this fancy shul in Manhattan, and I'm walking in now, I'm thinking to myself, oh, Ray, what did I do? I really made a mistake. Should I walk out and go to another shul? I said, come on, your hair ready, the Rebbe shul, it'll be okay. So I see him the next day, he says, after the davening was over, he said, wow, I never had such a spiritual experience in my entire life.
The guy who brought him?
The guy who he brought.
Oh, that's so sweet.
Right. In other words, he didn't even see the thing that he was all worried about. He was so uplifted. But that uplifting is in makir, from the singing, from the davening, from the chayes that he saw. And of course, there's a makir that we don't see with our eyes. It's a shul in general, and the Rebbe shuls, there's a certain presence of kedusha and holiness that lifts the person off the ground. Okay. We will stop here. We continue tomorrow from page 23. But don't worry, we're on our way now. We're coming to a Roy the Messiah soon, yeah. Whoever wants can take one of the workbooks. Yes. Kevin.
אוקיי. ונוגה זה אומר שהוא עכשיו רגיל, וכאילו הוא לא עובד ולא...